Well, I'm actually gonna be honest with you. War Tycoon has really been focusing recently on adding as many planes into the game as humanly possible, and realistically, there are way too many planes in the game now, because you guys have recently been asking me to actually re-rank these planes out of how good they truly are, and which one of these planes is the best, which one you should use over the other, and etc. But I'm going to be completely honest, there are so many planes in the game to this point now, that it's actually going to be incredibly hard to actually rank these out of like top 20 best planes. So in this video, guys, I'll be using a quite different ranking system than what I normally use. And this has really been made easier for me by the official War Tycoon wiki. So today I'll be rating these planes out of 3 categories. I will be, of course, rating the fighters first, next I'll be rating the ground attacks, and then the multi-role planes to kind of give you guys a showcase on what is best for one specific scenario. So anyway, let's just go ahead and jump into it. This is going to be quite of a fun video. So starting and going ahead with the fighters, this is going to be a very obvious pick. The top 5 on this list, which I'm personally going to be picking, is of course going to be the Mustang. And we all know why the Mustang is of course going to be at the number 5 spot. There's nothing special about it. The only thing I like about it sometimes for starter players is that you guys are able to outturn much modernized fighter jets, but again, those fighter jets are really easily able to just get away from you by just using the travel speed. Other than this, the Mustang has decent area damage for ground attacks. Nothing really special, but it is a great starter for plane players, so I do definitely recommend you guys to go ahead and use this if you have no other choice. However, this video is all about having another choice. So number 4 spot will be taken by the MiG-29 full crew, and yes, this might be slightly unfortunate for all the MiG fans out there. I'm gonna be honest, this is a great fighter, but at the end of the day, it just gets outclassed by any other fighter on this list. I don't personally like its cannon this much. Its area damage is really not that good. It does also seem to be very inconsistent in terms of shooting people while they're in the sky, and just some shots just tend to go for the enemies. These missiles are actually pretty terrible. Like, they do incredibly weak damage. Yes, I guess there are 6 of them, so there's some versatility for that, but also the turning speed of this vehicle is also not that great. It's just very unfortunate what has happened to the MiG-29, but this thing does not hit hard at all. It just has a lot of numbers, and that's about it. So on the other side, the F-14 Tomcat will be taking the number 3 spot on this list in terms of the best fighter in the game. And the reason why I'm going to be saying this is because the F-14 still to this day can hold up pretty well, and it's way better than the MiG-29. I don't understand why people actually use the MiG-29 over it. But the F-14 still has some insanely good travel speed of 325, which is actually pretty insane, as you guys can see. It seems to be having some of the best travel speed in the game, even as of till this moment. It also has an incredibly powerful cannon, which I really like about it. As you guys can see, 50 per shot is actually pretty insane, if I'm gonna be real with you. It also has some decent turning speed, but of course, if you guys are going to be good at dogfighting your enemies, then you guys will easily be able to defeat them by even out-turning them. Even this, though the turning speed is not going to be this good, it's always going to be about the strategy. But another main thing about the F-14 is that the F-14's missiles, they really do hit hard, and that's what I love the F-14 missiles for. Until this day, they are still staying as some of the strongest missiles in the game, and I do really love the F-14 for that reason as well. Really do love it, and I think this is one of the best fighters in the game. Now, the number 2 spot will actually be taken by the Harrier Jump Jet. I'm not going to be spotting it in because it's pretty much just a copy of the F-14 Tomcat. It's a little slower in terms of travel speed, but it does have 2 cannons, and that's what makes it really good, because no matter what, if you guys are going to be turning to the left or to the right, you'll always have an advantage over your enemy in the circle fight, which I really do love for it. And the Harrier also has pretty much exactly the same missiles as the F-14, so it really does not make that much of a difference, but I'm going to be picking it because of the double cannon and the fact it has veto. However, number 1 spot in terms of the best fighter in the whole entire game, it's not even a freaking debate, man. It is going to be the Spitfire. This vehicle by far has been dominating the meta so much for most people because of how fast this thing can actually out-turn its enemies. Are you guys seeing this turning speed? This is actually god level turning speed, and that's what makes the Spitfire pretty good. But another thing I really like about it is that it has so many different angles from which you guys could be shooting your enemies, to the point sometimes it's pretty much impossible to miss. And the only downside of this vehicle is that it doesn't have flares, but again, I'm speaking about fighters here. If you guys are going to be circling your enemy, they're always going to be dead, and you're always going to be winning this fight. So anyway, this is going to be my #1 spot in terms of the fighters. Let's go ahead and move on to ground attack vehicles. So as you guys can see, we're going to be having 7 ground attack vehicles. Let's go ahead and cover them and show you guys a pretty good list of them. So anyway, let's just jump in. So on the #7 spot, unfortunately, I will be ranking the B-29 Super Fortress. I'm sorry, but unfortunately, this vehicle is probably the weakest ground attack vehicle. The reason why is because these bombs pretty much tickle the enemies. That's like the only thing that the B-29 bombs are actually good for is just destroying shields. But other than this, the area damage is not even great, unlike the B-29 bomber. The AI turrets is pretty much the saving grace of this vehicle, but at the end of the day, this vehicle is so insanely large that it's so freaking easy to get shot out of the sky. Like, I freaking hate the B-29. It's so sad what has happened to it. I really wish that the bombs would actually have some decent area damage, so they would actually make it to be some kind of a threat, but this vehicle is just so easy to counter, and it's really not even any strength that's going for it, except the fact that you guys could spam it sometimes, and it just gets pretty annoying with the AI turrets. But again, that's the only saving grace about it. I really don't like the B-29. It's really sad what has happened to it. So the #6 spot is actually going to be taken by the Ju-87 Stuka, and you might be wondering why I'm going to be picking the Stuka over the B-29 Super Fortress. Well, there's only one very simple reason. Versatility is the #1 reason why. What I really like about the Stuka is the fact that you guys can pretty much treat it kind of like a fighter, but at the same time, it can do a very heavy ground attack on very still targets, like something like a mouse maybe, or something like the Zone Vault. There's a lot of different targets that this thing could be pretty decent for, and I really like the Stuka for this. It's just overall much more versatile than the B-29 bomber, but at the end of the day, I don't really like it, and I hope that it's going to be getting some kind of buff, because the problem I have with the Stuka is that it's going to be taking exactly 2 different parts to go ahead and spawn it. If it was 1 part each, I would be totally fine with it, but since it's just 2 parts that you guys will need in order to spawn it in, that's one of my problems with it. I would probably be ranking it higher if this wasn't one of its problems. Anyway, let's just move into the next one. Now, moving to the #5 spot, I will be picking the V-22 Osprey. I'm going to be totally real with you. I really like the V-22 Osprey, and there's one thing I don't understand this much, is why this vehicle is actually considered a ground attack vehicle, or this is just a transport vehicle. But let's just go ahead and pretend like it is going to be a ground attack vehicle. I really like it for 2 different reasons. One of them is going to be its versatility in terms of air-to-air, and everything I really like about the V-22 Osprey is that this vehicle has an incredibly weird hitbox, to the point that it's going to be incredibly hard to hit it, and it could actually be good at ground attacks against tanks. You guys could pretty much just sit around 2,000 studs in the sky and just pretty much go ahead and go into veto. I'm gonna show you guys like an example of this, and then you could pretty much just strafe around, and I think the tank players will have absolutely no chance of actually being able to hit you, just because of the fact that this vehicle has a very weird and unpredictable hitbox, and I really like it for this reason as well. But also, the V-22 Osprey in general, it is very unique because of its main gun. I really do like it for this reason, but I sadly cannot place it higher on the list because of the fact that other vehicles out there are just a little bit more versatile, and this vehicle just doesn't have as much weaponry as many people could have hoped. But either way, this is an incredibly good vehicle, and I'm definitely going to be ranking it high. It could even be top 1 if it really does depend on what you guys prefer for your own different causes. Now, moving into the #4 spot, we have ourselves the A-10 Warthog. I really wish I could put this thing higher. This has to be one of the most iconic vehicles in the world, but unfortunately, it's not as great as many people could hope it to be. The A-10 Warthog has very good strengths of the fact of its versatility against ground vehicles, because of the fact that you guys could pretty much be able to shred a tank with its main Gatling gun in around like 3 to 4 seconds, which is absolutely insane, by the way. It's much better than any other planes, and I really do love the A-10 Warthog for this reason. But other than this, it doesn't have as many strength except the versatility in terms of being able to drop bombs on people. It does have 2 2 air-to-air missiles. It doesn't really make sense why this vehicle has 2 air-to-air missiles. I would believe it to hopefully have ground missiles instead, because it would mostly make sense. This is a ground attack vehicle, but I guess it's just going to be having air-to-air missiles. Again, make it make sense, you know? But yeah, the A10 Warthog is overall very strong. It also has some really good health, and it can survive quite a lot, but it does still get one-shotted by tanks, and it does get countered by really a lot of vehicles in the game because of its terrible turning speed. But yeah, the A10 Warthog is still definitely out there only because of its main cannon. Other than this, I would not be putting it any higher. Alrighty, now moving to the number 3 spot, and I'm going to be personally picking the F117 Nighthawk. This vehicle a few days ago had an absolutely insane buff, which has then been reverted to the fact that this vehicle is able to reload every 5 seconds. But now, as you guys can see, it's going to be reloading at a much slower pace. But let's talk and go ahead and continue. But let's go ahead and actually talk about this vehicle's insane strengths. Is the fact that this vehicle is pretty much a perfect counter to any vehicle on the ground. Like, anything you guys want, it will have it for you. And it's just really good for being able to attack pretty much any vehicle on the ground. Its only issue that I have is that it doesn't have very high area damage. It's not going to be able to be this good at destroying bases or really killing infantry. But other than this vehicle does have some high areas of versatility because it's never going to be dying to anti-air weapons because of its stealth ability, and overall this vehicle is just really good at doing its job. However, it doesn't have as much versatility as the other 2 vehicles on this list, so I won't be putting it any higher. Let's go ahead and jump into number 2. Now, moving to the number 2 spot, we have ourselves the Su-25 Frogfoot. This thing is basically the A10 Warthog, but it does everything better. It has better turning speed than the A10 Warthog, better damage, better versatility. So let's cover the strengths of this vehicle. This vehicle is incredibly powerful. It has pretty much a 30mm autocannon, which is going to be pretty much as strong as the A10 Warthogs, which is absolutely insane, by the way. I really do love this vehicle for this reason. But not to add, if you guys do get yourself some precise attacks on your enemies on the ground with these rockets while also just using the main cannon, they are dead in a matter of half a second. Not to add, it has second strongest bombs in the whole entire game, which, by the way, one of these bombs is able to freaking one-shot an Abrams X. Absolutely insane. Not to add, it has some support missiles which are just able to kind of help it in air-to-air combat, but again, this vehicle is not made for air-to-air combat, and it does its job absolutely perfectly in terms of attacking things on the ground. I gotta say, I freaking love the Su-25. Oh yeah, and I forgot to add, this thing can casually just tank a tank shot to the face and survive as well. That also makes it even stronger than what every vehicle could have been on this list. Alrighty guys, this has to be probably the easiest pick of my life, but on the number 1 spot, I will be picking the B2 Spirit. This thing is an absolute joke of a vehicle in terms of its power. This by far is the strongest vehicle in the freaking game that we've ever had for being able to destroy things on the ground. First of all, this has the best area damage in the whole entire game. Second of all, it has the strongest bombs in the whole entire game. Third of all, it can freaking rapid fire these bombs so insanely quickly. And the most important thing about it is that its job perfectly at being able to be a ground attacker. It melts tanks, it melts boats, it melts people that are in the freaking bunker. This thing annihilates absolutely everything in the game. Not to add, it has second highest health in the whole entire game. This has to be a freaking joke in terms of power. Not to add, it also has stealth, so bye-bye to anti-air vehicles. You're absolutely cooked if you see this thing. Holy moly with that. The B2 Spirit is easily the best ground attacker in the game. Now, moving into the multi-role vehicles, we have 8 of them, and this is where stuff gets really interesting because these vehicles out there are truly the best in the game. So let's go ahead and move right into it. So on the number 8 spot, by far, and very easy pick, I will be picking the F4 Phantom. I'm sorry F4, but you're going to have to be at number 8. So the F4 is overall actually incredibly versatile and pretty strong. It was added in the F45 update itself, and I really do love this vehicle for the fact it does have napalm bombs. It is the only vehicle in the game that actually had this feature, and I wish they added more napalm bombs into the game, but it's fine. These bombs are pretty good at being able to destroy infantry, and it is pretty versatile overall vehicle because it can turn pretty damn well compared to a lot of other vehicles in this game. It's not like god level turn, but it's definitely above average. It also has 2 missiles which are universal, which we do really love that fact as well, and overall its cannon is also pretty strong, but once again, nothing super special. Every other vehicle above that's going to be above it is just going to be beating it in pretty much every single category. Not to add, the F4 is still pretty good though, I gotta give it that. Alrighty, so moving into the number 7 spot, I will be picking the F-16 Falcon. I am sorry, F-16, but I simply cannot put you any higher, though you're still pretty strong, so let me go for your strengths. So the F-16 Falcon overall has to be one of the best planes in the game in terms of just being able to turn really well, but not to add, it has the best barrel rolls in the whole entire game, by the way, which is really good. It can do it at the highest speed, which is also pretty useful, but it doesn't make as much of a difference in the fight. It does have 2 bombs, which are pretty decently strong, but overall the F-16 is only really pretty useful in terms of being a good fighter. Other than this, it's not really that good. It's just a little bit better than the previous vehicle that was on this list, which taken the number 8 spot. But other than this, the F-16 doesn't really have as much use. It's just overall pretty good and solid, but other than this, no special strengths going for it though. Now, moving into the Eurofighter Typhoon, which will be taking the spot number 6 on this list. And you might be wondering why it's going to be so low. Well, I'm going to be explaining you guys and why, and there's very much simple reasons for this. So the Eurofighter Typhoon is overall very strong because of the fact it does have 2 versatile type of weaponries, and it's the first ever vehicle in the game that does have its own anti-ground missiles, which I really like that idea, and I think they should be adding it to more vehicles. But overall, the Eurofighter was and is still good because of the fact it has some insanely good turning speed, and I really do love the Eurofighter for this reason. However, the problem that's still standing with it is that it doesn't have as much ground versatility as any other vehicles in the game. But I'm not denying it, it is still incredibly strong. It's just missing a few other versatilities, but overall it's just really good at the job that it was made for, which is of course going to be a fighter, but at the same time it is still pretty versatile in terms of being able to destroy tanks. Now, moving into the spot number 5 on this list in terms of multi-role vehicles, I will be picking the F-18 Hornet, and this is where things start to rack up and get insanely good, because the F-18 Hornet has to be one of the strongest vehicles in the game in terms of overall brute force. The reason why is because it does have some of the strongest missiles in the game. Not to add, its cannon is also incredibly strong. As you guys can see, each hit is going to be doing exactly 58 damage, which has to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest in game, and that's why I love the F-18 Hornet for this reason. Not to add, it does have some incredibly powerful brute force bombs, which can very easily just be able to melt any vehicle on the ground. But another thing which I do love about the F-18 is that its 4 missiles are also one of the strongest in the game. The only problem standing for the F-18 Hornet is going to be the one very annoying fact that it doesn't have as good turning speed as other vehicles that are going to be above it, but that's pretty much where the problems are going to be ending. This vehicle is once again pretty much a tank in the sky. Gotta say, I freaking love it. So now the number 4 spot will be taken by the F-22 Raptor, and the F-22 on release was actually incredibly disappointing for a lot of people until they actually noticed the true power of this vehicle and how good it actually is in terms of its turning speed. As you guys can see, the F-22 has pretty much one of the fastest turning speeds in the whole entire game, but another thing that's incredibly strong about it is the fact that its missiles do hit insanely brutally hard when you go ahead and actually hit your enemy with them. They do insanely high damage. And another thing I would like to talk about the F-22 is that it's by far pretty much the fastest vehicle in terms of speed, of course travel speed, in the whole entire game, which is another one of its benefits. But overall, I really like the F-22 Raptor of the fact that it can also potentially receive stealth in the future updates, because all of the weapons are actually located internally and are not going to be on its wings or anywhere, which overall just makes this vehicle so much versatile compared to any other vehicles on the game. However, this vehicle could be placed higher, but I'm not going to be placing it higher because every other next vehicle that's going to be on this list is just going to be miles better than the F-22 Raptor. I'm sorry, F-22, but you're going to have to stay at the number 4 spot. So moving into the number 3 spot, and this is where things get incredibly difficult. I will be picking the Just 39 Gripen. However, this thing is definitely for the potential of going for even number 2 spot, or even the number 1 spot, which is going to be higher than any other vehicle in the game. And the reason why is because this vehicle has pretty much the highest damage potential in the whole entire game, because of the fact that it does have its fire and forget missiles, which you guys could pretty much just be able to spam and destroy anyone in air-to-air combat. But let's go ahead and talk about its strengths and why this vehicle is so insanely strong. First of all, it has incredibly powerful bombs which you guys could go ahead and drop at your enemies incredibly fast, which is great. Another thing that I would like to add to it is that this vehicle does have some pretty good maneuverability and overall turning speed, which I also love this vehicle for. Another thing is that this vehicle does hit very brutally really hard in terms of its air-to-air missiles, but of course, the VIP of this whole entire vehicle. It's the first ever vehicle to have fire and forget missiles, which of course give it the highest damage potential in the whole entire game. And I could honestly rank this higher, however, it's very hard to go ahead and rank this higher because we just haven't had enough time to go ahead and test the potential of this vehicle and how strong it truly is. Like, the Gripen update has only been out for less than a week by the time I've been recording this video, so for now it's going to be staying at the number 3 spot, but it could by far be way higher on this list. Gotta love the Gripen, it has so much potential, and we just gotta find out how to use these fire and forget missiles. Now, moving to the number 2 spot, the freaking Su-57 Felon. Oh man, this thing is pretty much just a brute force and a freaking air-to-air beast out to once. So pretty much what this vehicle is so insanely good for, I don't think I need to explain. Do I have to even explain it to you guys? The Su-57 Felon is pretty much has some of the highest turning speed in the whole entire game, rivaling even the F-45, and it's just so insanely close. And not to add, it has some insanely powerful lock-on missiles which are able to both work for tanks and planes, and the main thing about this vehicle is that it has to be one of the best ground attack vehicles in the game as well, because you can pretty much melt any tank or any vehicle on the ground by just spamming these missiles. Not to add, its bombs is also a very nice way to support this vehicle in ground attacks. It's just absolutely perfect, and the only thing holding this vehicle back is that it's not like the F-35 because of the fact it doesn't have veto, but it also doesn't have as much health, where the F-35 of course is going to be exceeding in this category, and it's of course going to be taking the number 1 spot. So let me go ahead and talk about the F-35. This vehicle is absolutely no joke, and no one could mess around with this thing. This vehicle has the second highest turning speed in the game, behind the Spitfire. Not to add, it has the strongest missiles in the whole entire game. It can tank a cannon shell, it has veto, it has pretty much everything you guys will ever need to use. Not to add, some of the highest travel speed in the whole entire game as well. F-35 is the most perfect and well-rounded vehicle in the whole entire game. I could possibly even rank it higher than the Zumwalt in terms of just pure power. This vehicle is by far the strongest ground attacker in the game, the strongest air-to-air combat vehicle in the game. Do I have to say more? I don't think so. This vehicle is just a beast of its own. There's nothing to add to it. F-45 by far always going to be taking the number 1 spot. It will never get beaten. Anyway, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this list. Would you rank it any different? Do you think this is probably one of the most accurate lists you've seen? Most people will be saying this. I really did try to contact a lot of people who play the game competitively just like me to make this list and make it as accurate as possible. Anyway, I'll see you guys next video. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much to my channel members, and let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like to see more videos just like this.